exactly what we do.
What is the iBank? We are a nonprofit organization that supplies donor tissue to local surgeons for the visually impaired within our community to restore their sight. The iBank is the agency that collects the tissue, does the recovery, we process it, and then, like I said, we distribute the tissue for surgery. We are a 24/7 on call. We have what we call recovery technicians, and we're probably one of the few iBanks in the country that employ or, we put our recovery technicians in these spots, but they are students preparing for medical school with bright futures ahead of them, trying to study to become an optometrist.
It sounds like pretty serious business to say it's nonprofit.
Nonprofit, we receive no outside funding from any sources, United Way, Red Cross, no grants, nothing like that. We solely exist on fundraising. So yes, and we provide, and you'll see that in one of the slides, to over 33 hospitals in 11 parishes. So people just don't, and I know I didn't, they don't understand the need, for corneal tissue or transplants until it affects you or someone in your family, a loved one. And that's why our fundraisers are so important to us. And I mean, we have some generous people in this community, and that's where, and a lot of our donors, they've had family that's went through this and they realize now, but yeah, no outside funding whatsoever. So our recovery techs are bright and shining med students for the most part, and this helps them in their journey for their future careers. And we get the best of the best. And it's just amazing how brilliant these, I call them kids, but they're not, but these young adults are. It's just truly amazing. And we work closely with LOPA, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. We basically piggyback off of what LOPA does. So LOPA will get the referral called in, and then we come in behind them because our donation is something separate than the regular organ and tissue donation. But we're so thankful for LOPA, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, for doing what they do. They're on a much grander scale, and we're so fortunate to be able to have them as our organ procurement agency that we collaborate and work in conjunction with. Accreditation, the Baton Rouge Regional iBank is a member of and accredited by the iBank Association of America and registered with the Food and Drug Administration. We have strict guidelines to adhere by. And when we say we're a nonprofit and we have expenses, we have all of our we have labs within the Baton Rouge Regional iBank, and it takes the incubators, the refrigerators, everything has to be up to standards, has to be inspected, has to be maintained, and the cost of those are just astronomical. So that's why our fundraising is so important to us. And with the Food and Drug Administration, the iBank Association of America, they come in and they perform routine inspections. So we're on top of our game, and we will stay that way. The history of iBanking. In 1905, Dr. Edward Cern performed the first corneal transplant. He did so in Vienna, Austria. And then this looks a lot different than what it looks like today. But in 1937, Dr. Baton performed the first corneal transplant in the United States. He then went on in 7 more years to found and establish the first iBank in the United States in New York. So that was in 1944. 3 short years later, Louisiana had its first iBank. So we were just blazing trails back then even. The Southern iBank opened in 1947. And the Southern iBank is in New Orleans and still exists today. That's how we got our start. And we work closely with them. We were just at a corner collab this weekend. And, you know, we have a healthy competition. We say with each other whose table is going to look the best, but like, we're forever grateful to them, you know, for letting us get our start here in the Baton Rouge community. So in 1976, the Baton Rouge Regional Eye Bank was formed as a satellite of the Southern Eye Bank in New Orleans. And then just one short year after, our volunteer group, the Baton Rouge Auxiliary, was formed, which is now our Visionaries. They have been active ever since. Their names just changed, but they mean the world to us and they do so much for us. And that's how I got after my transplants. I was a visionary. I was a volunteer. I can't say enough about our volunteers. They're just amazing. And then in 1979, we became the eye bank at Our Lady of the Lake. And that's where we are now. But in 2002, we became independent and became the Baton Rouge Regional Eye Bank. It has, you know, its pros and cons. We don't get the funding that the hospital does, you know, but they let us stay there. So it's pretty good. They give us a place. If you're ever at the hospital, the Physicians Tower 3, the Medical Plaza 3, where Cece's Coffee is, just go straight behind it. There's the restrooms on the right, and we're right behind there. Stop in and say hello. We usually have our little Jumbotron outside playing things. So stop in and we'd be delighted to visit and show you what we do. The eye bank provides 24-hour, like I said, corneal recovery services to more than 33 local hospitals in 11 parishes. I actually, every other week, I go to Our Lady of the Lourdes in Lafayette and do new nurse orientation over there. That's one of our hospitals. And you know, that bridge, oh gosh, I gotta go over the bridge today. Hope the traffic's not bad. You kind of dread it. The minute I get over that bridge and in that hospital, in the room with those new nurses, it's all worth it. It's like, why did I even think the bridge was going to get me down today? Absolutely not. Because you let them know they are like on the floor. They're the ones that start this whole process of facilitation and make it possible. They're the ones that make a call and say, you know, I think we have a suitable donor. They are an organ donor. Their family wants to know if, you know, they're getting ready to take measures and, you know, what do we need to do to facilitate the donation process? They're interested in it. By no way, means, or form do they advocate. They're not allowed to, but they allow the process to happen and to do it correctly. So after, you know, we secure or recover the tissue, we deliver it to the operating room facilities. We have, we use brass, but we also have the 5th floor at the Eye Medical Center. That's where I had mine at. And for the surgery itself, you have to be awake during the surgery. You have no anesthesia because you have to stay awake and not move. You have to be perfectly still. And if you have anesthesia, most people would kind of drift off and maybe jump, you know, and that could cause something terrible. Or people snore when they go to sleep, and you have to remain perfectly still. So it was quite, I'll remember it to this day. I mean, I remember when they removed my cornea, everything went black, and it's surreal. And you're like, you know, is this the way it's going to be forever? But absolutely not. The process after it, you go home, it's outpatient, you lay flat on your back, nose to ceiling for 4 days. You have, like, you can get up every 4 hours for a little restroom break and a snack, but you have to lay perfectly still as much as possible to let that tissue transplant and not reject. It is like the old-timey roll of film. That's what the tissue looks like, the cornea. And when they insert it, it starts to spread. And they, over the days and weeks, they insert a gas air bubble at the end to help it attach. And then it starts, you know, slowly opening. And I do remember, like, after about a week and a half, I saw that first little pinhole of light coming through it. And I was like, oh, this is just absolutely amazing. The most beautiful thing ever. So, you know, I was very blessed, and I knew that I needed to take care of myself and do everything the doctor told me to make this as successful as possible and not, you know, jeopardize any of my gifts that were bestowed upon me. The eye bank provides follow-up communication with donor families. With that being said, it can be as little or as much as they would like. They let us know. We don't push anything on them. The Baton Rouge Regional Eye Bank is the liaison between the recipients and the donor families. I got my recipient package. They tell you, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, because it's all anonymous. And it's up to the donor's family to make that decision if they want further contact. Mine's been 5 years. I wrote my first letter within 6 months of receiving my transplant. I did not write it right away. And I did that purposely because I didn't just want to say, and I see some of these letters, I'm like, y'all need to do better. Thank you for the gift of sight. No, we can do better. I may have been a little overkill doing 6 pages, but I wanted to be able to give that family an update on how successful everything was and everything that I'm able to do. So I kind of did that same thing, took that same path with the second transplant. And I haven't heard, but I still hold out hope that maybe one day I will. And you never know. I mean, people grieve differently. You don't know what their family situation was, if they even had family. So, it's all in God's hands and it'll happen if it needs to. We provide educational community programs to promote and encourage eye donation, which is what I live for. Love to do that. I'm out in the community all the time, schools, health fairs, churches. Last weekend, it was the coroner collab for all the coroners in the state of Louisiana because they play a vital role as well. So if any of you ever, think that there's a need to get out there in your community, and I know there is, but if you have a specific venue that you'd like me to speak at, feel free to reach out to me and I definitely will be there. What is the cornea? The cornea is a thin, clear covering on the front of the eye. If I had one of the old watches, it would be like the face of your watch. It allows light to come in, it filters the light, and light must pass through the cornea for it, enable for there to be sight. If the cornea becomes cloudy or scored or damaged, your vision is dramatically affected. And that's what happened with mine. The functions of the cornea: it provides the clear, smooth surface for the light to come through. It controls the amount of light that comes through your eye. You need that to focus and to see. And it filters out UV light, which protects the lens and the retina from UV radiation. Oops. After we recover the cornea, the process is that it is preserved until transplantation. Optisol GS is a liquid that a media that contains gentamicin and streptomycin. It nourishes this endothelium for up to 14 days before it's transplanted. That's like the max. The best results we've found over the years have been when the transplant takes place within 7 days of recovery. And when I say it must be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius to maintain the pH level, that's one of our many pieces of equipment in our office that has to maintain that. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Indications for corneal transplant: congenital opacities, keratoconus, when your cornea starts taking a cone shape and you can't see, the light can't focus and come in correctly. Infections. Indications for corneal transplant: you could have a traumatic injury, moving vehicle accident. We see that a lot. Sports, recreational, foreign body, chemical. I say that I'm very careful, but I really had a close call last April. I went to the Irish Italian parade and I was feeling the 500,000 pounds of produce they were throwing. I had a green sequin dress on, a big metal bucket saying, "Here, throw it here, throw it here." And they were. Well, a rogue potato got me in my right eye. Had sunglasses on, broke my sunglasses, knocked them off. And let's just say I went to the emergency room, had an MRI done, had an orbital rim fracture. But thank goodness that the eye is shaped as it is. Your eye is set back into the orbital rim and it does what it needs to do. It protected my cornea. I was so scared because I had to follow up with Dr. Heigl, my cornea surgeon, the next day. I was so scared to tell him, like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But everything was fine. Thank goodness. It just had let the fracture heal on its own. The last condition on this page is what I had: Fuchs corneal dystrophy. It's where your endothelial cell loss leads to swelling and cloudiness of the cornea. And it's very painful as well. But my cells, I barely had any left. And with this transplantation process, the transplants usually last 10 to 15 years before those cells start deteriorating as well. So I hope in 10 years from now to be back on that organ donor waiting list and still doing what I'm doing. And it is a hereditary disease, like I said, and prevalent among women. So my daughter, she is exhibiting those signs already at 27. You know, we just thought, oh, you know, she's an attorney, she stays on her computer all the time. Our eyesight's just bad. Well, I got her in there and he's like, oh my goodness, she's starting. So she will need a transplant a lot sooner than I did. So I don't want to call it selfish, but like, I'm doing what I'm doing for our future, for my future with my family, and for all the generations out there, you know, to be able to have such a blessed and glorious life that we could possibly have. And when they say that organ donation saves 8 lives and enriches 75 more, it does. I mean, I was one of those 75. You know, would I have lost my life? Absolutely not. But would I be able to see all that I see today and experience all that I do and be able to do this tonight? Absolutely not. I probably maybe could, it just wouldn't be, I don't know. And I'm just so blessed. You know, it just makes such a difference. During this surgery, like I kind of explained before, the disc-shaped segment of the injured or diseased cornea is removed and replaced with the healthy cornea donation. This similar piece, like it just has to be perfect. And our surgeons just have the absolute cutting technique and just, they're wonderful. And our training and our recovery technicians, they have to have this training to be able to do that and have it to be as successful as it can be for the surgeon. 97% of all these transplant surgeries are successful. That is just astounding to me. That is amazing. And we found that 3%, a lot of it attributes to patients not taking the proper aftercare afterwards, and rejection sets in. You know, people are like, oh, yeah, laying on your back for 4 days, that's so easy. Well, it wasn't, but you know what? You have to do it, and you have to. I probably put eye drops in my eyes 25 to 30 times a day to maintain, you know, my vision and my corneas. I even have to, they make eye drops out of my plasma, because your plasma is your liquid gold of your body. It has everything in it that's good, all the nutrients, and that keeps my corneas fresh. And so there's a lot of things that you still have to do after transplant, and we find that people just don't do them sometimes. And there's a lot of questions, you know, is human donor tissue the only thing that like can be used? Absolutely. There's no other replacement, and we just have such a great need. There's nothing else that we can use besides human tissue donors. And one of the interesting facts about it is corneas are avascular, so you don't have to have the same blood type. There's no blood supply to the cornea. So, you know, organ donors can just do so much for us. You don't have to have that same matching blood type. And like I said before, my 2 donors were men. You don't even have to be the same sex. So it's pretty amazing what you can, the gift of sight you can give to someone. Who can be a donor? Yes, sir.
When they replace the segment, what is it, just grow together, or is there any
It's
surgery?
stitched. Yes. Like in the surgery, they took mine out, put the new in, stitched it, and over time, you know, it just became a part of my eye. Yeah. So
it's one cornea to one cornea. I mean, they have to harvest the whole cornea to give you.
yes,
a whole.
definitely. Yes, ma'am. Anyone can be a donor, age 2 to 75, but there's no limit for research or education donors. And we need, you know, this wouldn't have been possible without research donors in the past, and we still continue to need them. And our technicians have to be certified, our surgeons have to continuously be certified, and these are the kind of donors that like enable that to happen. And no gift is ever wasted. If we have a donor, and we try to, of course, place it in the community first, in our Baton Rouge community and the communities that we serve. But if there is no recipient that is, scheduled to have a surgery anytime that week, because it's a 7 to 14 turnaround day, day turnaround, we branch out to, other parishes in our area and then other states. No gift is ever wasted. We find placement for that tissue. And, other eye banks do the same with us. They reciprocate. If we have a need, if we have a surgery scheduled or an emergency and we don't have tissue on hand, we will reach out and we do that with each other. There's no really worry. I don't even remember being worried about having the transplant as far as, what if this person had this or that? How's that going to affect my body? There's so much medical testing that is done now with all the new diseases and everything. The donor must be free of infectious and bloodborne diseases, such as HIV, hepatitis or sepsis. There cannot be any evidence of IV drug use. No non-professional tattoos or piercings, anything like that. They are screened 100%. So that was never really a worry in my mind that my body was in any kind of danger from getting something from my donor. They cannot have any bloodborne cancer, leukemia, or lymphoma. The donor family has concerns, I'm sure. The most common ones we come across are appearance. Does it affect the appearance? Can I still have a regular funeral? Absolutely. It does not affect the appearance of your loved one whatsoever. Will it delay the funeral? No. The timing is such that we have to recover within the first 24 hours. Other than that, we've lost that donor. So we are there as soon as we possibly can be. LOPA is in and we're right behind them. So it does not delay any funeral arrangements whatsoever. It doesn't cost anything to the donor family. And then some people worry about, anonymity, and it is totally anonymous. There's no communication that you will ever have that you don't want. So all that is facilitated through the Baton Rouge Regional Eye Bank. There's no religious objections. All major faiths support donation. How to become a donor? You can visit donatelifela.org, or you can also visit your local office of motor vehicles. And we're working very closely with them too, to get that established back into their office. Because we have kids getting their driver's license, and what better time to get a heart on your driver's license is your first driver's license. Or when you renew, and we found in the past, they don't always ask. If you don't have that heart, they're supposed to ask, would you like to be a donor? And we're trying to get back out to the DMVs and get them focused back on that again. And another important thing is, if you are a donor, if you would inform your loved ones, your family, and let them know. I just spoke last night at the Ascension Kiwanis, and Pat there said his dad was a donor. They had no idea. He said he was all for it, but it was a shock to him. So they're already dealing with enough, and then if they're not informed, it just is one more thing that you have to try to digest during that time. So let your loved ones know of your intent, definitely, and your decision to give. Just in closing, the eye bank gives the families the opportunity to turn, I feel like, such a negative and grieving situation into something positive by giving the legacy of sight. Recipients like myself are eternally grateful or return to what we would call a normal, enriched living situation through the transplantation. Like I said, all this is possible through so many factors, but the Baton Rouge Regional Eye Bank is one of them, with the 24/7 services that they provide. And like I said, no outside funding is received. We are totally nonprofit fundraising. We're getting ready to have our day at the races on the 21st. We brought that back since COVID had shut everything down since 2019. That was one of our biggest fundraisers. In the past, we've done Phantom Breakfast, Derby Day, and take down blindness. But I'm going to try to branch out into some new areas and just do some fun stuff too. not that this wasn't fun, but just some new and breathe some more life into it with some new ideas. We also facilitate what I feel like is the most moving service that I have ever attended in my life. It's every year right before Thanksgiving in November, and it's held at the chapel at the Lady of the Lake. And it's donor families and recipients. And I just had my transplant November 13th. So it was probably 2 weeks prior to that, and I attended my first service. It was the most emotional, absolute experience that I've ever had, I feel like. It lets the donor families reflect, and the recipients just give such gratitude for these gifts that they receive. And we have donor families speak and recipients speak. And I'll never forget that donor family that was up there. She was I know she was a college age student. And she was just beginning to start nursing school. And she had lost her father. And at her birthday party, she opened her first gift, and it was a stethoscope. And she was like, why is my mom gifting me this stethoscope, like this expensive stethoscope? I haven't really even started nursing school yet. It's great, but like, this may be a little premature. And she was questioning it, and it was for a reason. The recipient was there. The gentleman that was the recipient was there, and she got to listen to his heart through that stethoscope, which was her dad's. And then the recipient spoke right after her, and he just said, I made that birthday party. I make everyone after that. I'm there for every barbecue. I'm there for every cookout. I'm there for every holiday. He's like, I am their family, and I have my life because of them, and they just have such a bond. And that just resonated so much with me. It's just a miracle, a total miracle that things like this happen every day, and we just take it for granted. This is just some of our events. This is like our day at the races that we're getting ready to have. And it's just been, I think we've been doing it for over 30 years now. I don't have the knack sometimes. We're going to do it this way. And there's the Thanksgiving service for Life in Sight. Like I said, we had the recipients and the guests and the donor families. I just want to thank you all again, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any now. If you think of any, I have some goodies, but in it, I also have my business card. So if there's ever anybody you think I could reach out to, feel free to give me a call. On the back of my business card is a QR code, and you can scan that with your phone, and it'll bring you right to our website.